Oh, you still have to ask.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, you still need to ask. That's good. Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
Anyway, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Bosta, Business Development Manager for NHMEP, excuse me, New Hampshire Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, How to Motivate Your Sales Team in 2022. And of course, just to let you know, we are recording today's session. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, you can go one more, Ken, I think. Yep, there we are. So anyhow, we NHMEP offers services in 3 key areas. There's product development. That's where we work closely with the UNH College of Engineering for designing, developing, and manufacturing new products. We improve manufacturing processes by offering training on Lean, Six Sigma, ISO, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, and plant layout, just to name a few. And we also help manufacturers reposition their business model to find new clients with our business growth training in the areas of sales and marketing. And next slide. So on the map, you can see that we cover the entire nation. So the MEP system is a nationwide system of centers, and we're linked through the Department of Commerce and NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. There's at least one center in all 50 states in Puerto Rico, and we're able to leverage a vast array of public and private resources and services that are available to every manufacturing enterprise in the state. Our mission's simple. We help manufacturers in New Hampshire improve their productivity, compete globally, and keep jobs in the state. We've on this slide, you can see we've worked with over 700 manufacturers in New Hampshire and touched over 11,000 New Hampshire employees who have gone through our manufacturing training programs. And next slide. So I did mention the 3 key areas. I'll go into a little more here. The first is operational excellence. That's where we offer training on Lean, Six Sigma, plant layout, blueprint reading, GD&T, and Lean and Green Energy services. The second area that we're involved in is workforce development. So we're part of the Sector Partner Initiative in New Hampshire, where we work with middle schools, high schools, community colleges, and manufacturers to build the future workforce of the state. Every year we put on Manufacturing Month, and during Manufacturing Month, we coordinate school visits to manufacturers in the hopes that some students will make manufacturing a career. Last year, we had 1,605 students visit 45 New Hampshire manufacturers. And keeping with workforce development, we provide leadership training, team building and problem solving, technical skills training, and training within industry. The third area is innovative growth strategies. That's where we offer the Sales Training Collaborative Program, you'll hear about a little later on. A custom sales training program, you'll hear a little about that, as well as our Marketing Strategies Collaborative Program. We offer quality management system training, which includes the various ISO standards, food safety training, cybersecurity assessments for manufacturers working with DoD, and technology-driven marketplace intelligence, or TDMI. And next slide. So this shows our economic impact. After one of our clients, or any of our clients, have gone through one of our training programs, NIST MEP, where we receive partial funding, requires us to have them fill out a impact survey. So as you can see from the slide, it shows you the compiled economic impact we've received from our clients in the last 3 years. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter. You're going to hear from Ken Chio, president of our Sales Coach. Ken created our Sales Coach to help companies develop a sales strategy and execute a sales process that makes sense for their business and provides coaching and training that ensures their success. So now I turn things over to Ken.
Great. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
All right. Yeah. So as Eric says, I've been doing this for 15 years, and we've been working a lot with manufacturing companies and locally and across the country. And so what let me get my deck up here. Let's see. Here we go. What we're going to be talking about is how to motivate your sales team in 2022. And we've been doing a lot of these webinars throughout COVID, and this topic has come up. People, clients that I've been working with, they're asking me, how do I keep my team motivated? And so that sort of transpired into this topic. So what we're going to be talking about is, how do really you set meaningful goals for your company, for your team members? And that includes your corporate strategy, but also the individual goals that your team members have. And then how to keep them motivated. What are their roles? What are their parts in it? And how are you helping them to understand they're making a difference? Because that's a big part of what people want in self-motivation. And part of that's not so much just achieving goals, but also, are they constantly learning and improving? And how do you help them to recognize that? Because that's a big part of keeping people motivated, or self-motivation. And then knowing what are those things that they really need to do to continue to improve. And that's taking those objectives and chunking them down to activities that will lead them to that progress. And then tracking things. What do you need to track so that you can see that they're on track, and then coach them, train them and coach them on continuous improvement. And then if we have time, we can get into compensation programs, because, a lot of people mistake the thought that, really it's all about compensation. It's really not. Money can be a motivator, but a lot of these other things are really a big part of what keeps people motivated on a sustainable basis. And so that's what we're going to get into. Now, with this size group, I think it's okay for us to have a conversation. I would rather discuss how you're using some of these things we're talking about, or can, and really then have a dialogue about what's happening in your business, or what could happen, so that it's more relevant for you. And so I want to encourage you to if you have a question, because these are a lot of different topics, just ask it. Interrupt me. You can use the chat if you like, but I'm okay if you just interrupt me and ask the question, because we're going to be off on a different subject and you'll forget the question, and we'll try to have some time at the end in case you do have questions. Okay, so just want to encourage you, if you don't have a lot of background noise, you can keep yourself unmuted or unmute at will. Okay, so let's talk about goals first of all. Let's first talk about what doesn't work. Okay, a lot of times when I first talk to a company about working with them, this is part of the conversation. We're not even talking about how we would work together at this point. I like, tell me about your goals. And most of the time, it's, well, based on my current experience, we think 5% for this year makes sense. And that's not really, what's the meaning behind that? I mean, I'm probably going to close a deal this afternoon with a company. They already told me they want to work together, but there's two partners in the business, and I asked the question. There's a lot going on. That's the reason why I got the response I got. But it's one of the owners told me, well, if we could just stay the course where we are now, we'd be happy, because there's some things going on. Then he said, okay, well, I'd like to get to 6 million, because they're at 5.4 last year. Right now, what is the science behind that? What's the real meaning? What does that mean to the business? If they got to 6 million, can I help them get from 5.4 to 6 million? Sure, but that's not, what is the meaning behind it? Okay, so we're going to talk about how to set really meaningful goals, and then you don't want them to be unrealistically high either. So I have I also deal with software companies, and I have a client that where they have 3 salespeople I've been working with, and the sales manager, and the goals weren't really unrealistically high, but they appeared to be unrealistically high because of the way they're going. The salespeople were getting a lot of inbound. This is where software works. They get a lot of inbound leads from their marketing. But the problem was they were getting leads to people many, many levels below where the big deal was with these big companies, and they were selling small deals. And if they keep on doing that, they will never get to where they need to be. And so the corporate goal wasn't unrealistically high. It was just that the way that they're going to market and the salespeople aren't really leveraging the relationships they got by getting into these big corporations they were doing business with to get to the bigger deal. And now that's what we're doing, is helping them to really go up market within the customers they have, and then proactively prospect to complement what their marketing people are doing to get engaged at a higher level in the first place. And once they do that, now that they're doing that, they can be making, these salespeople can be making 4 times what they were making before. But just, keeping on doing what they were doing, they would never get there. And it was demotivating for them. Okay. Now, you don't want to make them too low, because then there's really nothing to motivate them to do better. And they can't be vague. So that's, I think that's the problem with just saying, oh, hey, I think this year we can maybe grow 10%. Well, that's vague. Why 10%? Or are they really prioritized so that it's meaningful? Okay. So what does work? Right? What is your vision? If you guys are leaders in your company, or what is the vision that the leaders, the owners in your company have set for the business? And this is a question I ask all the time. Listen, let's just say 3 years in the future, because 3 years is a long time in today's time frame. It's think about it. 3 years from now, 2025. What does your business look like that you are really happy about the success that you've had? And, what is that vision? Okay. So I have a client that sells batteries in a particular market. And I've been working with them for about a year, and maybe 4 months into the program, the owner, when I first started working with him, he says, I want to grow 30% this year. So I said, great. Okay. So we figured out the formula, and, 4 months into it, he says, look, we're tracking 45%. How am I going to keep these guys motivated? And I said, well, did you tell them that if they stay on track, then in 3 years, you will own 50% of the United States market? And what was really driving them was the fact that they were relatively a newer player in the marketplace, and there was a 10,000-pound gorilla that everybody bought. So when they went to talk to their customers, they would say, hey, you know what? We make batteries for this application. They'd, we use these other guys. And they'd call somebody else. Hey, we make batteries for that. We use these other guys. Okay. So when they are owning 50% of the US market, they're kicking those guys' butt. That's motivating for them. And I said, did you tell them that if you keep on going, in 5 years, you will own 50% of the United States, of the world market? Okay. And that is motivating. Or is it based on a real increase in market penetration, which would be the case for these guys? Because, they're in a particular market, and it's easy to understand what percentage of the market do you have? Or is it based on a measurable shift in percentage? So there's another company I've been talking to, and they said, well, right now, because they're in a consumer market and they're in a corporate market, and 60% of their business comes from consumers, 40% from business, and they want to shift. They want to shift that 60% corporate, 40% consumer, and for economic reasons. Okay, so that is something that we can figure out. All right, what's the formula to do that, to get there, shift that focus, get the people doing what they need to do to make that happen. Okay, that's a real meaningful goal. Or is it based on measurable customer impact? Having making a difference for customers really could be motivating. I have another company we're dealing with that deals entirely through distributors. And so the problem is that they make products that really makes a difference for the target audience. It's parts for trucks, okay? And they have products that packages things up that is really makes a difference in convenience for the end use customer. The problem is the distributors, are in locations where these truck people come to, and they're people that don't really understand or can't really clearly articulate that difference. So what they're doing is they're going out and they're talking to the end use customers to try to drive business to the distributors. And what we're working on is like, keep in mind how you're making a difference to them. Be really clear and understand how to articulate that and drive that. It's not about what you have, your products, your service, how it's different. No, that sounds the same to everybody else. It's how are you making a difference to them, okay? And that's motivating for them. Or is it based on the revenue that you need? So I have another client who makes water jet cutting equipment, okay? And actually was the vice president of the U.S. of the Americas in sales that hired me, and then they promoted him to president. And now he's dealing with a lot of internal things that need to take place to be able to continue to grow, correcting some problems from the past, okay? But our goal now moving forward, because he's now the president, he's also still the salesperson, okay? And so he's running the operations. So we need to get he's been investing all of his profits. First, he's made them profitable, and now he's reinvesting that profit into operations. And now the next level is, okay, growing his sales team. So we know what it's going to cost for him to do that. Our revenue goal is based on what does he need to profitably grow that. So now he can get somebody in to do the sales activities he's doing. So now he can focus on getting us more distributors, because he doesn't have the time to do that now. Okay, that is a meaningful goal of top line to achieve the bottom line he needs to reinvest. Okay, or what other purpose is there? And those are meaningful goals that you can communicate to your company, your team members, that can motivate them. And then what's their piece to it? Okay, so when you think about it, what is that vision? What are the biggest challenges you're going to have in getting there? So that with the water cutting person, first the focus was we need to really pay attention to the installs, because when they sell equipment and they were going out and installing the equipment, they'd have to, they wouldn't have what they needed, or they'd run out of time, and then they had to go back and make another trip, and it wasn't profitable. They had to fix that first. They have to fix how they're standing by and servicing the equipment. We've done that. That was last year. Now he's poised for growth. Okay. And so, or what are the opportunities that you need to focus on? Where, the battery company basically was growing, like I said, 45% without doing any business with the 4 biggest prospective customers in their industry. Now they've already landed deals with 2 of them. Okay. And so that's their biggest opportunity. We're focused on growing that, as well as they're developing some new products. Right. So we can, there's some background noise. Let's see. If you've got some background noise, maybe you can mute yourself. Okay. All right. And or what would be the strengths that you would need to reinforce, or skills that people would need to develop. I have another client that sells that they do kitchens and baths for really big developments, and one of they have 3 offices. One of them, is we were coaching the team, and their goal for this year was 7.75 million for that one office, and they're tracking $1 million a month right now, right? So it's what we're working on. Their individual goals for the sales team are pretty much based on delegating, based on their internal relationships, and working on how they work together. And then one of the salespeople is working on her own ability to cross-sell other products, because she has some limiting beliefs there. So these are their individual goals that they've identified based on where they are, that they're working on to progress. Okay, so these really the basis on helping your team members with their individual goals. Okay, because otherwise, typically what we do is, all right, here we're going to grow 10%. It's 5 million. Now we're going to divide it up. That's your goal. Okay, so now they just have a quota. They have a quota that they're trying to hit, and or they come in as salespeople, and they have a base salary plus commission typically, and they're looking at that opportunity, and they're saying, oh, okay, the company wants me to do X, and if I do X, I will make Y in compensation. And like, well, I want to do 2X because I want to get 2Y. And they're all psyched up about it. And then they start doing all the hard work of trying to get new customers, and they get discouraged because maybe they're not set up the right way. And then they start getting comfortable with X. And they're saying, well, you know what? I'm living off X anyway, so life's not so bad, right? And it's just they're focused on what their current reality is. And if they don't change that based on something that's meaningful, then they'll just continue to be motivated to maintain the status quo. So the problem there is that when you're just focusing on the quota, okay, we want to hit this number, it's all outcome. And what needs to happen is help them to identify what are the numerous activities that are going to help you get there, because the activities is what is going to enable you to get there. So if that's in chunking those goals down, so you should have 3, 4, 5 different activity goals underneath each outcome goal, and you focus on the activity goals, because activities is what gets you there. So when you just focus on only outcomes, you can't always control the outcomes, but activities are things that everybody is 100% able to control. Okay, so when you're managing your sales team, you want to help them to see their part of the goals, set your goals, meaningful goals based on what we talked about. Help them to create their own individual goals, and then help them with planning to break them into activities. What do they really need to do, if nothing else? Weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then track it. Track it so that you know that they're staying on track. Help them to track it themselves. Okay, and I'm going to get more into that. And so if you're tracking it, then you can coach them on staying on track and helping them to recognize what is helping them to stay on track. Okay. And then performance evaluation is not a biannual meeting that you have. It's continuous. So if you're tracking things, you're reviewing things weekly and evaluating them monthly, not once a year, not twice a year. It's an ongoing thing so that you can help them to, make sure they see that they're making a contribution. That's the key, on an ongoing basis, and then set higher goals. Or if you need to, you step in and coach them on staying on track. Okay. So really, when it comes down to goals, it's a matter of really having meaningful ones and writing them down. 10% of people actually write out their goals. And I don't know how many of you have written goals for yourself. But when I ask that question, I find that number is pretty consistent, that maybe 10% of people actually have written goals. And, part of it, half of it is maybe they've done it in the past and it didn't work out based on some of the things that we already discussed. Right. So it's really understanding what is a real goal. And it's not just writing down what you want, although that's a good start. But goals are not really desires. Goals need to be SMART, and you may have heard of this acronym before. And so you want to make sure that your goals are specific. And, I gave you some ideas about how to make goals specific for your company. And then you want to have a time limit. When is it that you want to have it? Because if it's specific and it's time bound, then it's typically going to be measurable. And that's the right way to approach it, because the other way is, all right, based on my current reality, I think what's realistic is this. That's not the way to approach it. The way to approach it is like, okay, to achieve our vision, we need to be this specific thing, and we need to have it by this time. Then you can chunk it down and determine, well, is that really attainable? Based on what we have to do, is that really realistic? Okay, that's the right way to approach them.
So Ken, for a new business, a small business, should you be looking at measurables by the week, by the month, all of the above?
So in terms, it depends on what goals we're talking about. If you have an annual goal, then what I'd like to do is help is looking in quarters. Okay. So I use actually pretty much 100% of my clients, they want help with time management. They always want to help with time management. And I used to use a book called Getting Things Done, and it was pretty complicated, a lot of good stuff in there. I use a book now called The 12-Week Year. And here's the concept. When your year is 12 months and January doesn't go the way you expect, there's always February. And if first quarter isn't up to par, there's always second quarter. But if your year is 12 weeks, every day counts. So we break it down to 12-week years. And what do you want to accomplish in the next 12 weeks? And then you figure out, okay, what is it that I need to do, if nothing else, that I need to do to achieve that? And how often do I need to do those things? So those are the activities that you can be 100% responsible for and in control of, whether you do them or not. Okay. So whether you go to a trade show and whether you talk to the 10 people that you've set a goal to talk to, you are 100% in control of whether that happens. Whether you spend 1 hour every day making phone calls and emails, you are 100% in control of whether you do that or not. Okay, for example, and so what are those activities, and keep yourself accountable? And then so there is 4 13-week segments in every year. So you've got a 12-week year, then you've got a 1 week to plan your next 12-week year. And so I think that once you've maybe gone back and done some of these things to think about, okay, what's a realistic goal for my company? You know, given that it's a relatively new business, perhaps, or, you know, here's where we are right now, and some of the things that we need to reinforce to be able to continue to grow. Here's a meaningful goal, and then chunk down the activities. Does that help? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Okay. And then find ways for them to visualize that. So once you've set those meaningful goals and you've chunked them down and helped your team members to understand what their part is in that, then help them to see how you're making progress, whatever that is. And like I said, it could be not just revenue or profit, it could be skills development, or, you know, let's just say, take the water jet cutting, you know, we've worked on goals with his operations people on, okay, improving the productivity of their installs. Okay. And, you know, different things that need to go into that, or, you know, customer facing things, and helping them to see how that's improving over time based on how they measure it is motivating. Okay. And so, you know, help them to see that, you know, are you posting results? Are you helping to share in the results, in the numbers, and you know, as a team, letting them see the progress that they're making. Okay. 5% of people are regularly visualizing their goals. And what that does for you is it programs your mind from the get-go to visualize success. And your mind becomes a really powerful tool in helping you get there. I mean, life is full of examples. I like to use the story of Roger Bannister. I don't know if any of you guys are runners out there, right? But Roger Bannister, you may know who he is. The first person to run the 4-minute mile. Okay. And what's compelling about Roger Bannister is before he did it, nobody had done it. In fact, it was so compelling, the belief that you couldn't, that medical experts, you know, were on record saying, oh, you know, you can't do that, your heart would explode. But Roger Bannister was a runner, and he knew he could do a 1/4 mile at that pace. So he believed he could do it. So he goes out and he does it. Immediately, within a couple of weeks, 2 other people had done it, because he changed the expectation of everybody. And by the end of the year, 9 people, I think, had done it, because he changed everyone's expectation. Okay. And so what happens is, when your mind's programmed, it's like the thermostat, right? If it's cold out, right? Just got colder today, right? So you turn the thermostat up, and that set point that you put on the thermostat is your goal. The heat is the motivation. And so your mind now helps with self-motivation and all the great things that come with it. The belief that you can get there, the energy, the confidence, the creativity, the persistence, enthusiasm. And people then are self-motivated versus just trying to hit a number. Okay. And the other thing is, so when I start working with a company, the people that I'm working with, we work through this. What are your own goals? And I encourage them to not just look at their business and career, which is what we're working on. Okay, that is what we're working on. And when typically in sales, when you're hitting your business and career goals, it has a personal financial benefit. Okay, so yes, there's that too. But I encourage them to think about other areas of their life, and it's not the point is not that you want to set goals in all of these areas. The point is, if there is a gap anywhere, then what happens is these are things that you think about, and they can take away the energy or focus that you have when you're trying to focus on whatever you're trying to focus on. So, for example, we're working on your business and career goals, but let's just say, you know what, I'm so busy on my business that, there was some relationship things, there's friends that I used to see and we used to do things on a regular basis, and I missed that. And now you start thinking about that. Well, why not set a goal there? Right. But if you just say, hey, look, I go to the gym every day. I wouldn't change one thing about my physical health. Well, you don't need to set a goal there. But the point is, if there's a gap in any area, set a goal there also. And you could say, okay, over the next 12 weeks, here's what I want to have accomplished. This is the steps I need to take. Let's say it is physical health. Well, you can set a goal, a new vision for yourself there, and chunk it down to activities. Okay. Personal development or community involvement, which might be, things in the community or charitable involvement, those kinds of things. Okay. So then the next thing is really chunking it down. That's what I mentioned before. And what are those activities that need to get done and how often? Okay. And then you have to plan your weeks. Plan your weeks so that they get on the calendar, because otherwise sales activity like prospecting, that's the kind of thing that if you don't do it today, the world doesn't end. Right? A customer calling and needing something that right away, that is something that takes precedence and easy to push the prospecting off. So you've got to plan your activities and then adjust it daily and stick with it, or just agree that you're not going to do it. Okay. Now, part of that is, any questions about goal setting? Okay. All right. So the next thing is, what are the roles? So if you're looking at, okay, we want to beef up our sales activity, we want to set some strategies in place. What are the roles that we need to fill, or are your existing people going to take on? Okay, and you have to look at what are they doing now and where is their time being spent. Okay, so if you need to bring in new resources, do you need to have an account executive who's actually going out and prospecting for net new customers and then having sales meetings and closing business? Or do you need account managers that are actually working with existing customers and growing that business? Or is it that you really aren't producing enough opportunities and you really need somebody that's actually doing the prospecting? Okay, because you know, account manager, you know, I can't tell you how many times somebody wants me to help take an account manager and make them a prospector. And, you know, typically people who are account managers are not hunters. They're good at customer relationship, but they don't like going out and prospecting for new. And maybe that's who you need, is maybe you need somebody to do that, that likes doing that, that's good at doing that, and or outsource it. Okay. Or maybe you're getting a lot of leads in and you need to be qualifying them better. And maybe that's what you need, is somebody that's actually taking on that responsibility, so your account executives don't have to be wasting time with people who just are kicking the tires. Okay. So, you know, to determine where is it that you need resources, you know, take a look at how are people spending their time, because if they're spending a lot, like say more than 20% of their time prospecting for new leads, maybe what you need is somebody to take on some of that responsibility, and you need an outbound sales development rep, or outsource some of that activity, so that your account executives that are typically higher priced people can be focusing on closing deals. Or maybe it's like you get a lot of inbound leads and somebody needs to be talking with them and working through them and qualifying them, so that the account executives now are not wasting time with people who just aren't ready to buy or never buy. Okay. Or you really do need an account executive who can really qualify, have meetings, and close deals. Or maybe your biggest opportunity is with getting more business from your existing customers, and you need account managers that have the ability now to cross-sell within those existing relationships and add to that business. Okay. So, you know, where is it that you really need and to focus? So, you know, what does it really look like to have a top producer, right? Best in class sales teams are consistently achieving or exceeding sales goals, can clearly articulate the company's competitive advantages, are the best source for information on the market and what your ideal customers really care about, and are winning deals without having to reduce margins, always have robust pipelines that are real and not clogging your pipeline, and provide then real predictable and consistent forecasts, aren't turning over on a regular basis, and work together as a team. Okay. And so how do we get there? Well, first you have to look at what's preventing it. Okay. There's market challenges. And I find a lot of times, you know, particularly, let's say, contract manufacturing, they're you know, they're really good at making one type of thing, and people just find them because they need it, right? But what ends up happening is then they end up, because people are finding them through their marketing, then into a lot of different markets. And the question is, all right, where do we need to focus for growth? Where is our best opportunity? Okay. And because if you're in a lot of different places, then you don't really have one real strong market to leverage. And, or, you know, you're not really you're in mature markets and it's highly competitive there. And, you know, the question is then, how do you differentiate what you do and specialize in a way that it's just not commoditized? Or, you know, a lot of times you're in a special market, and so your customers are located in a lot of different areas. So how do you, with limited resources, address, like I have a client that makes vessels for semiconductor manufacturing, the nasty stuff that they use, okay? And he has market penetration here, and we're like, all right, well, how do you grow? Well, where the customers are that he wasn't strong with is out in California. So it's obvious that now that he has strong market penetration here, that the focus should be out in California. Or, I have a medical device manufacturer, and there's certain areas where, they need to focus. California is another one, and they're in the Midwest. There's the East Coast, and then there's Texas. So we know where the market is. Let's make sure we have strong penetration in the areas where they are. Okay. Or sometimes what happens is they're so specialized that they have high penetration in one area. And, when you've got 70% of the market and you do, well, it's like trying to, improve your golf score from 80 to 70. Why not go into a place where you only have, like, your golf score is 120? It's a lot easier to go from 120 to 110 than it is to go from 80 to 70, right? And so where is the new market that you have the best opportunity? Or sales challenges. So I think I find quite often manufacturers are reactive and not proactive. And that was what was happening with the software company, is that they were reacting to what was coming in from the marketing department, but it was getting them into deals that were too small. And so the combination of helping them to go up market within those customers, as well as their own prospecting, being proactive to go after deals that are bigger, is what's going to get them into the bigger opportunities. Okay. Or dealing with existing clients and not enough new. That typically happens too. There's a company we're talking to that makes pre-stressed concrete for construction. And they have, existing customers that come back and buy all the time. But that's the problem, is that they're just dealing with all these existing customers, but they're not as proactive as they should be going after new. And the problem is that some of those markets are, public markets where there's low margin, because it's all about price. You have to be the low price. And where they're finding the best profitable opportunities are in certain markets that they need to go after to grow that part of the business. And that means they got to go out and get some new customers. Or spending too much time with low value clients. I'm working with a wholesaler, and they weren't really paying much. They have a lot. They're fortunate. A lot of their customers just come back and keep buying. And so again, they're dealing with a lot of these existing clients. I'm like, well, let's look at who these customers are. And when we did that, it was kind of eye-opening, because there was one really big customer. They knew that. Then there were three that were, the next tier, just three. But then there was 51 that were pretty much 65% of their business. And then there was 370 customers that were the rest. And they spend so much time with those 370 customers. It's like, well, let's look at what's happening with those 51. And those 51 customers actually grew. They doubled the amount of those customers over the last 9 years, whereas the 370 grew 10%. Okay. And so we're like, okay, how many of those 51 customers can we get more from? And how many of those 370, what are the top tier in that group that could be some of those 51? Okay. And that is where we can focus, right? Or wasting time with people who don't buy. There. I had a conversation with a, a machine shop owner in Illinois, and he was like, "Oh no, I don't need help with sales." And I'm like, "Okay." And I talked to him for a little while, and determined that when he does a quote, he closes 10%. I'm like, wow, that means you're wasting time with 90% of the things you look at. Really? I mean, obviously, he didn't think that was a problem, or he didn't want to spend money on fixing it. But there's a lot of wasted time there, and it's the sales process. Or they complain about having a long sales cycle. Well, sometimes there is a long sales cycle. Like, the medical device manufacturer has to actually figure out, okay, how are we going to make this part? They have to design molds particularly for those parts, and the equipment, and how they're going to manufacture it, how they're going to staff that equipment and produce the quantity of parts in the time frame that they want. It's really complicated, and there's a lot at stake. Okay, so there's a long sales cycle involved in getting somebody to fire the incumbent that's doing that already for them and hire them to do it instead. That's a long sales cycle. Or I have another client that makes, they make biodegradable resins for plastics manufacture. Well, they've got to formulate that product first. And, theoretically, then they have to make it, and then they test it in the product. It gets tested. Then they have to go back and, tweak it, and then they test it again. That's a long sales cycle. But, it's usually when somebody says a long sales cycle is that they're spending a lot of time with people who are just kicking the tires and not ready to change. Okay. Or they're getting a lot of margin and pricing pressure from suppliers. We were talking to a company that makes parts, that distributes parts for airplanes. And, the part of the problem is their legacy products are really commoditized, and the margins are lower there. And they were selling mostly through distributors, so they really didn't have a good understanding of what their customers really needed. So that led to inventory problems of what they were actually buying. They would have over inventory on some things and not enough. But their differentiation was that they pride themselves on having what the customers needed, because these people are maintaining airplanes. If you don't have what they need, they're going to go somewhere else. And so now they're working on going direct so that they have a better understanding of that. And that's leading them into some things that their customers really need, that they're having a hard time getting, that they can sell at a much higher margin. Okay. Or being too dependent on the largest customers, or just not tracking the right lead indicators to know where you need to change, or being too reliant on sales agents or resellers or distributors. Okay, so what we want to do is make sure that you've got a marketing plan that helps you to really identify who are the targets that we need to focus on, and then what's our competitive advantage there. How do we differentiate ourselves? And in a meaningful way, based on what the customers think, not what you think. And then how you developing those leads, because the more time that your team members are spending trying to develop leads, the less time they have to be in front of prospects closing deals. And then what are they doing to prospect? Who are they going after? What are the channels they're going through to get phone calls with these people and getting meetings with them? And what's the formula? How many do they need? how many meetings they need to have, how many contacts they need to make, how many leads do they need, and then how are they tracking these things to know that their formula is actually playing out the way they expected it to be, or they make adjustments. And then what's the sales process that makes sure that you're not wasting time with people who aren't going to buy, or they just intend to buy from someone else. So, there's two parts to your marketing plan, and that's the internal analysis. It's like, who are the markets that we're going to focus on, and what is it that they really need and want, and what is going to get their attention, and does that really differentiate you? It's not good service, although maybe you do provide a better service, but that's not going to differentiate you, because everybody else is saying the same thing. Right. And then how do you deliver these messages in ways where people will pay attention, and then you have an action plan to produce the leads that you need. And the second part is the external analysis. What's happening in the marketplace that will indicate to you that you have opportunities there? Okay. Are there technology advances that will give you a competitive advantage in a certain area? Or how people buy and how that has changed over time, or who your target groups are as you pick the targets that you're going after, and you're out there talking to potential customers in those areas. Then you learn more about how robust that market is, or identify other markets that might be more robust, in really understand your customers and what they want, so that you get that feedback as to really what's their view of what makes you different and why they want to work with you. Okay, obviously the economy affects everybody's business, but also it's how many customers do you have already in that market, or how many prospects are there that you can go after in addition to the ones you have, or how competitive it is, or is there some political or governmental or legal action that is causing opportunity. I met last week with a company that makes armor for tanks and planes and body armor for soldiers, and obviously, their biggest concern is how are they going to get their stuff to Ukraine right now. But the sales VP still wants to develop a sales process and recognizes that he needs to do that. He's just a little bit preoccupied right now because of what's happening politically. Okay. Okay. And then what's in your prospecting plan? Again, you need, who are the targets, but also what channels are your sales team going to go through to get those conversations and then get those meetings? And then what's the formula? What's the formula there? So, common prospecting mistakes are just relying on passive only. And, obviously your website can produce leads for you, but it relies on people finding you and then taking you up on your call to action and contacting you. Okay, so passive activity, a good example I use is, let's say you want to do a direct mail campaign, and you send 1,000 companies a letter, but you don't follow up on anybody. You're relying on that letter getting to a decision maker. They actually read it, and then they take you up on the call to action. That's a passive activity. If instead you just sent 25 at a time and called everyone, you've made that passive activity active. Okay. And so the point now is not that passive doesn't work. The mistake is relying only on passive. Okay. Or being too dependent on a single channel, because it's going to dry up. And you want to, we try to get our clients working 4 active channels concurrently. And then what happens is you find that there's 1 or 2 that are bringing the lion's share of your business, and the other ones are feeding, and they work together. Or not devoting enough time to actively prospect on a continuous basis, or having a plan, or tracking and adjusting to the effectiveness of your sources. Okay, so there's a number of things that salespeople can do. In particular, everybody gets referrals from their customers because they're producing a good job, doing a good job. But how proactive are they in going after that? Or just cold calling, or networking in certain associations, or going to trade shows, direct mail I mentioned, or doing speaking perhaps, social media using LinkedIn or Facebook. And so there's a lot of different things that you can pick from, email campaigns that will produce leads or work congruently with the other channels that are your big lead generators. And so you want to pick at least 4 active channels that each salesperson can work. Okay. And then what's the formula? Because there's different efficiencies and return on invested time in different channels. For example, cold calling typically is a 2% return on invested time, meaning you got to talk to 50 people before you close a deal. Best I've seen is 11% with a client. But if you're not producing a lot of leads, and that's what you need to do. I have a service that does cold emails for me, and it produces leads for me on a weekly basis. But there's a large volume that they're doing to do that. Okay. And then direct mail, where if you're being proactive with it, can increase that significantly. If you're just sending a lot of letters and expecting them to contact you, the best you can expect is going from 2% to 3%. Okay. Or if you're doing speaking engagements, and that's what these concrete people need to do, is going in and doing, educating the civil engineers on the things to stay away from, or things that they want to make sure they're covering in their specs, and that will help them to get a better understanding of where their best opportunities are. Okay. Or networking, where you go to an association or go to a trade show where you're meeting a lot of people, you get a chance to talk to them and decide who to follow up with. Or referrals, where the person who is the prospect has been recommended by somebody they trust to talk with you, and they've agreed to take your call. And alliance partnerships, where there's an ongoing exchange of opportunities back and forth. Okay. And that's a big part. If you have distributors, there has to be more of an alliance partnership there, versus you just relying on them without any control. Okay. Versus a quality introduction, where you're there and the person who's introducing you is there physically, and they're handing you relationship. And when you're working up there, that's a 95% return on invested time. Okay. The other thing I find is, a lot of salespeople are just working without a meaningful list. So then the first thing is, who are your targets? And then, do you have a list of decision makers that you can prospect? And there are a lot of list services and they're different levels of cost and quality. So there's the basic, like Reference USA now is Data Axle. They merged with I forget who it was. So it's Data Axle or InfoFree or InfoUSA, and these are typically, you can buy a static list for a couple $100, or you subscribe for maybe 1,000 a year, but the quality isn't as good. But at least the companies and how many companies there are, right? And then there's a lot of technology now innovations where you can get contact information. One that's very new, Seamless AI, where you can get contact information, and it syncs with your CRM, or Hunter.io that gets you just emails if you need them. And then there's a whole nother level of, Dun & Bradstreet merged with Hoover's, and they have ways to scrape the web and get you better quality data, but it's more expensive for a subscription. And then there's the 10,000-pound gorilla, ZoomInfo, which is very expensive, but it's amazing how much information they can get you. Or just using something like LinkedIn, where LinkedIn is the biggest professional network in the world. There's over 720 million people on LinkedIn, and every one of them is a professional. And all Fortune 500 companies are there. So very powerful tool. But you have to have a list of decision makers that you're working with. Okay. And then what's your sales process? I find it's really important. We spend a lot of time trying to wean our clients off talk. They just show up and throw up is what we call it. And they're just saying, here's what we do, here's who we do it to, here's an example of who we're working with, and this is what makes us different. And that is, they're just all about presenting. So when you show up and say, hey, here's what we do, here's who we do it to, and here's what we've got, what's the next question that comes from your prospect? How much does it cost? Right? You end up selling to price, or with low close rates, or they're just winging it, or it's whatever it takes. Or lone wolves can be very, very effective, but today, to be really have a sustainable process, you need a team. And so best salespeople listen more than they talk, are problem solvers, they're prepared, and they have unquestionable integrity in their team players. Okay. So, we talked about your marketing plan and prospecting plan. So you need to know how to build trust. The medical device manufacturer, that's the challenge there, is to get these big pharmaceutical companies to change what they're doing and depend on you. Because if they're not getting their product when they need it in the quantities they need, it's over. And to get somebody to trust you that you're going to be able to do that better than who they're using now, that's huge. And so you need to have agendas that helps to build trust and find out really what's their compelling reason to change, and are they committed to changing, and who's going to make that decision? Are you talking to the decision maker, or who else is involved in that decision, and how will they decide, and when can they decide, and what's involved in that, and how much do they want to invest? What's their budget? So when you present, you already know what their problems are, how serious they are, they're committed to changing, and you know how they're going to make the decision. And then when they're ready to make the decision, and you're talking to the people who are involved, and you know what they want to spend. So that presentation, there's a lot less riding on it when you give somebody a quote and you close the deal. You head off buyer's remorse, make sure they don't back out, set up an implementation plan where everyone's expectations are met, yours and theirs, and then you create a loyal customer who wants to tell everybody how great you are. Okay. And that way you stay on track. And so what to track? Everybody tracks sales. Whether you made a sale or not, because you got to bill them, right? But, you know, do you track your close rate? You know, everybody knows that they did a proposal, but, you know, a lot of times when I ask you know, a business owner, right, so what's your proposal close rate? Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, but it's just a simple ratio. You know, how many quotes did you put out, and how many of them became customers? Or what is the dollar per sale, right? What's the revenue divided by the number of closes? That was the problem with the software company, is they were too small. And so they needed a lot more than they thought. Okay. Or how many appointments do you need? So they can focus on how many meetings do you need to have per week or per month? How many contacts you need to get those meetings? And how many leads do you need to get those meetings? And where are your leads coming from? Okay. And sales performance really is in ratios, just like financial performance. And normally, customers are not tracking enough information or using that information to really understand their efficiencies. But if you did, then you could know where to coach your team or where they're getting stuck. Because if they're hitting their sales goals every month consistently, great. Then the only thing you need to look at is what percentage of those are net new customers? And maybe you work on getting more net new. But if you're not hitting your monthly goals, well, how many deals did you close? Because if you close the number of deals that you need, but you're not hitting the goals, well, maybe it's the size of the deals. So maybe you need to go up market, or maybe you need to get more, but something needs to change, right? But if you're not closing deals, then how many proposals are you putting out? Because if you're putting out a lot of proposals, not closing them, that's where they need help. Okay. But if they're not getting proposals out, well, how many meetings are you having? New opportunities with existing customers or new? If you're not having meetings, or you're having a lot of meetings and not getting to proposals, it's like, or who are you meeting with? What's that conversation? What's your sales process? If you're not having meetings, then how many contacts are you making? How many people are you talking to? And if you're having a lot of contacts, you're not getting meetings, okay, what's that conversation and who are you talking to? But if you're not making contacts, it's like, all right, what are you doing to produce leads? And so you can diagnose where they're getting stuck, how efficient they are at these different stages of the process. Okay. And then it needs to be reviewed. You know, it should be reviewed. You know, a lot of times, you know, I'll deal with a business owner and like, hey, if I get a good salesperson, they know what they're doing, I don't need a manager. Well, okay. Yes, if they're producing consistently, I agree. But that doesn't always happen. And you still want to know, I think that, you know, if you own a business, then, or you're managing a sales team, you got to know the numbers. It's all in the numbers. And so you don't wait a month or the end of the quarter to figure out, oh, there's something going on here, right? You got to look at it weekly and evaluate it monthly. Because if you need to make an adjustment, you want to do it and not wait till the end of the quarter or the end of the year. And then, you know, make sure if you need to change the strategy that you do, okay, and identify problems early enough so that you can correct them and stay on track, okay? And then train them. I mean, you know, a lot of times people come to me and say, all right, you know what, we need to get everybody together, and, you know, how much time you need? 1 day, 2 days? And, you know, I said, look, I can come in and do that, but, you know, we're humans. We can't take 8 hours worth of information and know what to do with it and know what to change or have any change. It's fire hose. So, you know, you as managing these salespeople want to drip information over time and work on it, okay? And then coach them, do role playing, look for opportunities for people to learn from what other people are doing that's leading to their success. And that's what should happen in your sales meetings. And, discuss results, review pipelines, yes, but maybe there's something that you can debrief a meeting that one of your team members had that is a learning experience for everybody else. Or maybe you work on role-playing meetings, or work on role-playing prospecting, or work on what the prospecting strategy is that's working for somebody, okay? And these are the things that are going to help everybody improve, okay? And then coach them. I do a program based on this, the Heart of Coaching, and help teams to become coaching organizations, which I believe is really necessary today in today's world to sustain a professional, a competitive advantage. And here's some research that shows, when people get trained, there's a blip of productivity, but then, to a certain extent, people go back to their old ways of doing things. So maybe you have a 22% improvement, but combined with coaching, there's more significant behavioral change, up to 88%, okay? And I think, going back to motivation, this is what came out of Ken Blanchard's, a 1-Minute Manager, did, in an assessment where, employees were rating, that their management, and 81% don't listen well, 82% don't provide feedback, and 66% meet only once a week, 28% rarely discuss future goals, 36% rarely get performance feedback, and 19% rarely solve problems. So, they feel disconnected. This is an opportunity for you as managers to really help your team understand what they're doing well and where they can improve and how they're making a contribution. Okay. And so with coaching, you take what it does work, everything we talked about, goal setting, action planning, having tools, metrics and measurement, and performance reviews, and adding in feedback, which is focused on the goals, and asking really learning questions instead of just telling them what to do when they're trying to solve problems, and providing support and encouragement and accountability. And that's what really creates high performance. And this is something that can be applied not just supervisor to direct report, but peer to peer, and from direct report up to your manager. Okay. And that creates leaders and fosters accountability, and creates more of a feedback rich coaching environment, makes change initiatives a lot more easy, and improves morale and motivation, and reduces turnover, and really creates a sustainable high performance team. Let's see, how much time do we have? Questions? So compensation, again, it's not always about the money. Is money a motivator? It can be. But, you want to make sure some of the things to pay attention to if you're looking at compensation is it going to increase morale? That's the key. And is it going to encourage a work ethic? What comes to mind is Wells Fargo. I don't know if you guys were around, like Wells Fargo people were creating dummy bank accounts because that's how they got compensated, and they got caught, and there were some big penalties there. So their compensation program was fostering, let's say, less than ethical behavior. And that's not the way you want to motivate your people. You want to reinforce participation. So you want to enhance communication. A lot of times, sales leaders create competitive environments. There's nothing wrong with a competitive environment, but you don't want it to be where, people are cutting each other's throat. You want an environment where people are working together. Okay, and so my food warehouse, food wholesaler, there's no compensation for, there's no commissions paid. It's all a team effort because of the way they do business, and that's good. It fosters teamwork. What works for their business may not necessarily work for your business, but whatever it is, you want to foster teamwork and communication. Okay, and it could be, once you look at where the skills gaps are, or resource gaps, that it's really about how are they improving the organization or their overall effectiveness, not necessarily bringing in revenue. Okay, but it should result in profit and be designed for the long term. I can't tell you. Just yesterday, somebody was telling me how, they brought in a big, home run, and we're making a ton of money off of them, and the company let him go because he was making too much money. And right, so that would indicate to me that they didn't have a long-term sustainable program there. Okay, if you're not sure about compensation, when somebody comes to me and says, look, can you help me develop a compensation program? The first thing I tell them to do is go talk to some similar businesses to yours that are not in a competitive area for you, and ask them, if they have salespeople, what are they paying them? How are they paying them? What's the ratio of base to commission? What are they giving for benefits? What's working, what's not? Because, your business is not going to be the same as somebody else's business. If you're in a transactional business and you have a business like these medical device manufacturers, where it takes months, takes years, maybe, if you're dealing with a pharmaceutical company, they're working on stuff that they're not going to get paid on for 3 years because there's FDA approvals and all that stuff. Okay, so there's there's a lot of factors there, and you want to know what works in your industry or similar businesses, and then decide what needs to be in the package for you, right? And some ways to deal with different situations is, first, once you know what the market compensation is for your industry and that particular position, you may be looking at a draw or a salary or a commission or what expenses. I mean, it could even be stock ownership, or, a lot of times what works best is just special recognition, even unexpected, to motivate people. Not that you hit certain targets. It's like, okay, surprise them with something that is unexpected once they hit a certain milestone. Okay, and other benefits. Okay, and then reevaluate it over time as you gain market share. It's always beneficial to base it on gross margin if you can, because then if it's based on total sales, it doesn't really incent them to, negotiate or to, improve the profit. And then, it has to be related to activities and what they're doing to achieve results. And also be careful of reoccurring compensation, because you don't want to encourage them just to milk their existing relationships and not be having anybody motivated to get new. Okay. Let's see. And then don't be afraid to get feedback from your sales team on the program. And it should be one that provides them with a decent income and be competitive in the marketplace. And, don't be discouraged, if top producers are making more money than you because they're doing their job. And then if sales managers can also be selling, right? But when you get up to the point where you get maybe 4 to 7 full-time salespeople, that's a full-time job. It's a full-time job. And if you're too distracted with sales activities, you're not going to have enough time to pay attention to what you need to for your sales team. Okay. So that's a lot. Any questions? I know I packed a lot in here.
Are you going to be releasing the notes like you did with the prior webinar a few months back?
Well, the deck.
Or the slides?
Yeah, I can make the deck available. We just recorded it. So Eric's going to make the recording available to you.
Great.
And yeah, so
Yes.
definitely.
As soon as Ken gets it to me, I'll get it out to all the attendees. Definitely.
Most
Yeah.
appreciated. Thank you.
Another thing too is what we have been doing with New Hampshire MEP is offering a what we call the collaborative. And what we do is we get 4 companies together that want to participate. And what they get is 2 4-hour sessions with the senior leadership. And in that, we work on these things we talked about. What's, how robust is your marketing plan? What's your prospecting plan? What's your, what are you tracking the right things? How are you doing that? And what's your sales process? And then we go to each individual company for a full day and work with the sales teams for a full day. And then we come back and we do a half day debrief with the executives again on, what did you get out of it? What changes have you made, or what changes do you plan to make? It's, I was just telling Eric, really, if I was going in and doing that, I would charge probably 5 times what New Hampshire MEP is charging for. It's very economical, kind of a no-brainer. And so if anybody's interested in that, I'm sure Eric will be following up with you on that. I think the last time we did one of these webinars, we had a couple of companies that were interested. So we may only need to get 2 more. Eric?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I guess that's my cue. All right, everybody, thank you for participating in today's webinar. Yeah, and just to go over what Ken had briefly said, we have a in-depth sales training program called our Sales Training Collaborative Program, which with Ken, hoping to start it maybe early May. Yeah, there are 2. We're trying to get at least 4 companies. We can run up to 6 companies. But we have 2 possibly interested already from the previous webinar we ran. And, we just really need 2 more to actually run it. And as Ken mentioned, the training sessions are done, the initial sessions are done in 2 half-day sessions with Ken. And then there's a full day individual session with each company, and then a half-day debrief. And when I say the 2 initial sessions, half days, that's when all the companies are together. You all participate, you all collaborate. And that's also true with the half-day debrief at the end. There is also a custom sales training program that Ken runs for us. I can talk to you more about that. Obviously, that's very in-depth, but there's much more to it. But getting back to the cost of the sales training collaborative that I mentioned, and Ken mentioned, that can be offset by 50% with the New Hampshire Job Training Grant through the New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs. I'm just going to give you a rough price per company. It's around $2,800 per company to participate in the sales training collaborative program. I believe you can have up to at least 3 participants from your company, and maybe a couple more. I'll double check on that. But anyway, if anybody's interested, let me know. I certainly will be following up with everybody, but I can also be reached at 603-724-0802, 603-724-0802. My email address is ericb@nhmep.org. So that's ericb@nhmep.org. And that's really about it. The last thing is just, the feedback. So I sent a link to our evaluation form. I'll send that out again. And if you could just complete that as soon as possible, that would be great, because it does help us, with future webinars, making them better for everybody. That's really about it. And anything else you'd like to add, or?
Well, let me just qualify, the full day sessions where I come to your business, you can have as many people as you want there. I mean, I've had
Oh,
people,
yeah, that's right. Ken's right.
I've had companies, coordinate that full day with an annual sales meeting where they fly all their salespeople in from all over the world, and they, and everybody's there, so I don't really care how many people are there. I'm there for the day. And, but with the 2 4-hour strategy sessions, it should be, 2 or 3 key people who will work on the strategies. And same thing with the debrief. And then I guess if they want to get the grant, then it makes their cost half of the 2,800. Is that how it works, Sarah?
Yeah.
I mean,
now, what I would do is put you in touch with our president, Zanagi Ibrahim, and Zanagi would then help you basically walk through things, let you know who at the state you need to contact there. If you need help with the application, I believe he can help you with that. Not that he would fill it out for you, but if you certainly had questions, he can also help. But it is a state grant. It's not through MEP. So there's a little bit of time lag. That's why I try to put things out about a month, because you have to do the application. The state has to review it. That could take a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks even. So anyway, there's just some time in between. But yes, Ken's right. It does cut the cost by 50%.
Yeah, well, I don't know where you can get 2.5 days of training for your $2,800 to begin with. So
yeah, and really half of that if you're
right.
approved for the grant, so it's even cheaper. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So that's about it. Like I said, Ken, unless you have anything else to add, I want to thank everybody. Okay, good. Thank everybody for participating. Have a great day, and I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you,
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Yep. Thanks for participating. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.